National Archives. I'm Judy Edelhoff, and I'll tell you a little bit about the programs we have here at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. We're located halfway between the White House and the Capitol, and we're particularly delighted to have such a distinguished guest with us today. And for those of you who are wondering why David Brinkley and why at the National Archives, we have a tremendous wealth of motion picture, sound, and video holdings here at the National Archives, including the Camel News Caravan from 1949, very early David Brinkley. And we also have the Nixon tapes. Those are receiving the most attention right now, of course. But some of you may not know that President Nixon also taped all television broadcasts of a non-entertainment nature, so that those of you who are interested in going back to old news broadcasts of the late 1960s and 70s might find some interesting material in the holdings of the Richard Nixon Project, which is at College Park, Maryland. And it's programs like this, which were inspired, like this program at the National Archives, where we try to bring you some of the newsmakers and thinkers of the day and of the 20th century that really are inspired by people like David Brinkley, who laid the groundwork and had all of the pressure of daily deadlines and in some cases rather dangerous on-site situations to report from, and the challenges of keeping up with such a varied career. Mr. Brinkley's new book, Everyone is Entitled to My Opinion, is now his latest book. His earlier book, Washington Goes to War, was based here in part in a lot of holdings we have at the National Archives, and I know some research was done here for that book. But this book takes us back to the 80s and the early 90s, and it's a wonderful collection, a number of them very similar to the little funnies at the end of this week with David Brinkley. David Brinkley was born in Wilmington, North Carolina, and was educated at the University of North Carolina and Vanderbilt University. He served in the Army during World War II, and afterward he worked for United Press and then joined NBC. And incidentally, it's his career as a writer, too, that comes through in this book, because the homilies you'll read are so incredibly well written. That's one thing we don't always appreciate when we see someone on television. He later joined NBC, where he would launch the Huntley-Brinkley Report with Chet Huntley in 1956, and then co-anchored the NBC Nightly News with John Chancellor. And since 1981, he has conducted This Week with David Brinkley. He's been the recipient of 10 Emmy Awards and 3 George Foster Peabody Awards. And fortunately for us, he lives here in Washington, D.C. Would you please welcome David Brinkley?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very ill at ease here because I feel I do not belong in the building built to house the most important papers in human history. Such as, I was here one day years ago, and I don't remember why I was here, but I asked to see the Bill of Rights, one of the great documents. The staff member of the archives said, "The Bill of Rights, here it is." My God, I can't touch that. Of course, that was some years ago. Now I'm sure it is under glass with 9 guards with drawn guns, and it should be. Because as I say, it is one of the great treasures housed in this building, and so I feel somewhat intimidated coming here because there's nothing I could possibly do, say, or even think would be worth keeping in this building. However, I'm here, and I'm not going to leave. So I've been asked to read a little bit from a book I have put together recently, and then to invite you to ask questions, and then, if I have the schedule straight, then to invite you to sign a few books if you like, but it's up to you. It's of no real great interest to me. So, well, it's not. This little book I put together because I thought it a shame that some of the really amusing, somewhat unimportant events in the news never get into the public prints, never get broadcast on the air, never get to be known by the great mass of the American people because they're not considered important. Now, what is important? It's an easy question to ask and very hard to answer, particularly in our line of work. What is important? I don't know. Whatever I think is important. But you may have an entirely different idea, and yours is at least as good as mine. Here is one that it came in over the wire from New Haven, Connecticut, and I liked it and saved it and put it in a book, and here it is. I will read it. a small and totally non-political event this week that probably will not affect the course of human affairs. In New Haven, Connecticut, a 15-year-old boy ran away from home, having no place to live, set up housekeeping in an apartment building at the bottom of the elevator shaft, where nobody ever looks. He brought in an army cot, lights, stereo, a hot plate, books, magazines. He rigged the elevator telephone so he could call outside. It is funny. He rigged the controls so he could park the elevator on a higher floor and get himself a little more headroom. And he might have lived there forever. But the tenants riding the elevators up and down in the mornings and in the evenings began to wonder why on the elevator they always smell hot dogs cooking. This is news. This is not a joke I made up. It came in on the Associated Press from New Haven, Connecticut. And finally they sent a repairman down to see what that was about. And he found the boy with furniture, stereo, hot dogs and all. A boy as ingenious as that might find something more useful to do than living in the bottom of an elevator shaft. So I made him famous for a time, and then they kicked him out. Well, I'm sorry about that. So it's just a little book, as I say, and it's full of that kind of stuff, which I have collected over the years in covering news of some of importance and some of total unimportance. Like this one, a television viewer has recorded and saved a very small news item from a program I did 24 years ago in 1970. He sent it to me. I'd totally forgotten it. Here it is. In Santa Ana, California, the police found a man living in a trailer, and living there with him were 3 bears, a donkey, a wallaby, an ocelot, a bobcat, 3 goats, 2 opossums, 1 monkey, 3 peacocks, 13 dogs, 4 cats, 6 pigeons, 5 doves, 3 rabbits, 5 guinea pigs, 1 duck, 9 chickens, 2 geese, 16 quail, 2 turtles, and his wife. That's the truth. That sounds like something Johnny Carson made up. It's not. It's the truth. The police came and took away all the animals and left him there with his wife. Now, a few perhaps interesting facts about the new player on the world stage, Kim Jong-il, who has inherited the power and the nuclear weapons in North Korea. So far, since his father died and he took over, we have no report that he has said a word, not 1 word. But his country's propaganda machine has done it for him, and I am reading the wrong one. So a man called the police and said his wife of 3.5 years was missing. The police searched and they found his wife, but they also found his wife was not a woman, but a man. The husband said he never knew it. He never noticed. I will leave all of this to your imagination, but I do wonder why he was not suspicious when in the mornings he saw his wife lather up her face and shave. The Washington Post said they wondered why he didn't become suspicious when his wife said what she wanted for Christmas was a drill press. The husband, now having discovered this, now wants an annulment on grounds of irreconcilable differences, and I would say that it is very likely the courts will agree. Asked about all of this, the man said, quote, this could be in his archives. The man said, I feel pretty stupid. So anyway, I'm happy to be here with you, even though, again, I am intimidated at being in this building and feeling that I do not really belong here. And nothing I say will last longer than it takes me to get to the front door. But in the meantime, I would invite you to ask questions that I may know anything about. Whatever it is, I don't care. If I can answer, I will. If not, I will say so. My only basis for doing this is that I've lived in Washington for about 50 years, have either seen, heard about, or been involved in almost every event in this city's history, which is the country's history. And I've seen a lot and remember most of it, but not all. So any question you have about anything, just raise your hand and I will, yes, sir, right here.
I'd like to ask about an item in your beautifully written memoir in which you talked about a woman who was very important to you in your life and whom you had lost track of. Virginia Mansell, I think, was the name.
That was her name.
And you asked in the memoir for any of her descendants or children to write to you, and I've always wondered, did you ever hear?
I did. I was working in Nashville, Tennessee for the United Press, and working in the same building, not with me, but in the same building, was a very pretty young woman whom I came to know and came to like. And we became good friends, and I took her out at night and saw a great deal of her. And I found that she was a graduate of Emerson in Boston, which at that time was a school of speech and drama. She spoke so beautifully that I loved listening to her. And when we were together at night, we went out for dinner and this and that. She began working on my speech pattern, which was then, maybe still, somewhat Southern. I say somewhat because I was born and grew up in the South, and my family has been in this country, in the South, since it began. And I don't know what a Southern accent is. You travel around the South, when you cross a county line, you run into people speaking in a different inflection. So which is the Southern accent? Maybe all of them. So I don't know what a Southern accent is, but whatever it was, I had it, and she worked on me, and she taught me to talk as I talk now, however that may be described. And it was during the war, the end of the war. I just got out of the Army, and we drifted apart. I never saw her again, but I did mention her in the book, as you say. And the result is, she married somebody else, had 4 daughters. She is now deceased, and her 4 daughters are my very good friends. They're all married. They live on the East Coast, here and there. And once a year, I invite them all to my house and have them there for dinner, and we put on a big party and a dance and so on. So they have become good friends, and that's the answer to your question. I'm very happy about it. Thank you. I can't see much from here. Just raise your hand. It doesn't matter what the question is. If I don't know it, I'll tell you. Yes, yes.
You have such wonderful restraint with your colleagues on Sunday mornings. How do you maintain that?
The question was, how do I maintain, what was the word?
Restraint.
On Sunday mornings on my television program. It's not easy, and I don't always succeed. Each one has a mind of his own or her own, in the case of Cokie Roberts. And Sam Donaldson, who has a voice of his own, and George Will, who has a brain of his own. So there we are, the 4 of us, like 4 those Disney characters. What were they? Sleepy, dopey, what? Yeah. Nobody's dopey. They're all very bright. They scare me to death. They're all smarter than I am. And I simply leave them alone and let them talk, and except when they interrupt. Then I come in and stop it. Otherwise, I leave them alone because I couldn't stop them anyway. So I get credit for standing there and watching the inevitable. It's like watching a waterfall. You can't stop it. And I can't stop Sam Donaldson unless I hit him with a stick. And that is not good television. Would not be good television. In fact, it wouldn't work, and I couldn't get away with it. But in any case, thank you for the question, and that's the best answer I can give you, which is not very good, I grant. Yes, right here.
After 50 years, are you optimistic about the government, or are you pessimistic about the government?
I'm optimistic about it. With all of its faults, and we all know what they are, and there are many, they are numerous. I think I have not been in every country in the world, but have been in a great deal of them, great many of them. And I wouldn't swap this government for any I have ever seen anywhere, including Britain, France, Germany, the civilized countries in the world. We do have our problems. We waste a tremendous amount of money. We take away too much tax money from the working people in the country. I hate the fact that in many, many middle-class families, the husband works to pay the bills, and the wife works to pay the taxes. Now that is outrageous. So as I say, we have many problems, including that and others. But nevertheless, this is the friendliest, most reliable, best governed country in the world. Now, some may say Switzerland, say, for example, is better governed. Well, I don't think you say that any longer, having seen what's happened there recently. I'm not going into that, but you know what it is. The money that the Germans put in the Swiss banks during the war, when they were all being murdered, somehow can't be found now. And there's more. So when you get down to the bottom of it, when I get to the bottom of it, there's no country in the world I would take in place of this one. So I'm very optimistic about it. We have a highly intelligent, good-natured population. I have talked over the years, I'm not a great speaker as you see, but I've talked to a great many audiences over the years about one thing or another, or about nothing much. And they're always good-natured, even when I'm wrong, and when I'm boring them stiff, they're still polite. So I'm very optimistic about it, and I expect this country to have a great, great, very, very long future. Yes, sir.
Continuing in that vein, what about the capital city? Having been a resident for so many years here, what do you see the hope of the city of Washington, D.C.?
That's funny you ask. Very sad. I take no pleasure in telling a little story about Marion Barry, who went to jail on a drug rap. They gave him a job in the prison workshop making license plates. He got out, ran for mayor, was elected, and one of the midnight comics on television said he would be the only official in the country who would go to his inauguration in a limousine bearing license tags that he made. There are many wonderful people in this city. There are some beautiful vistas in this city, as we all know. And I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. I can tell you what you already know, and so there's no need for me to tell you. You know what the problem here is here. Nevertheless, I think that we are skillful enough and decent enough and smart enough to take care of it over a period of time. I see today that I've never specialized particularly in the district news, but I see a story in the paper today that the federal government is going to be asked to take over several financial aspects of this city, which would answer at least a few of the problems. You know all the rest, and you don't need to ask me. Yes, sir. Yes.
You said that you came to Washington about 50 years ago. Can you tell us about what drew you to Washington and how you found it then? A little nostalgia.
The question was, I came to Washington in 1943, I think it was. What was the city like then as compared to what it is now? It was then a country town. It almost closed down in the summer because it was hot. Air conditioning had not yet been invented. And in the summer, you couldn't really do anything, and so nobody did anything. A lot of tourists came to town to see the monuments and to see the gorgeous buildings, including the one we are in now and the others. And that was about it. I came here once as a very young boy with my mother, and we visited 2 or 3 handsome buildings, and I can't remember now what they were because at the time I didn't quite know what archives were. I may not know yet, but in any case, I came and it was all very nice. The restaurants are pretty bad, grease traps, most of them. Now we have wonderful restaurants. It was a country town, in every sense country. People in this city then, most likely when they bought automobiles, bought them used. Used cars were the standard standard. That's what people bought. When you got old enough and made a little money, you bought a used car, not new, used. So it was accustomed to a level of poverty. All they had was a woman employee in an office job was paid $1,400 a year. $1,400, not 1,000, So everybody was more or less shortchanged in life. Simple town, nothing much to do here but go to the movies. And that was about it. And to drive around town in a second-hand Chevrolet. That was life in Washington, D.C. There was still one aspect of the 19th century, which was a horse-drawn buggy. I guess it's a buggy, a four-wheel vehicle with a horse pulling it for tourists to go up and down Pennsylvania and a few other streets and look at the buildings. That's long since gone, and if it were here now, it would get chewed up in the traffic. So I could tell you much more, but most of it you already know anyway, and now what the city is now is has its great, good, strong points, and some that are not. Yes, right here.
Tell us about a good book you read recently that you didn't write.
The money this building is full of them. The Library of Congress is down the street. Well, I haven't written any. I don't read fiction, only because I can't. I have to keep up with everything that happens, and mostly I have to do it by reading because it can't be everywhere, and so I read nonfiction. Right now I'm reading several histories of World War I, and you may wonder why. Well, I am reading it because it's a rather strange but recent discovery that beginning in World War I was what we now call the world you and I and all of us now live in. A great deal of it grew out of World War I. Hitler was the most obvious product of it. He came out of World War I embittered, feeling he had been cheated, and with the horrible results we know. So I'm not the right one to ask because I can't read for fun, pleasure. I just don't have the time. I only have 2 eyes and have very little time for reading. So the reading I do is almost all in some version of work. I try to keep up with the new publications on American history, world history, because that's really where I work. And I have to know about that. I don't have to know about the fiction, and so I don't read it. And I know I'm missing a lot, but I can't help it. Yes, sir, right there.
You apologized recently to President Clinton
No, I didn't.
for what he said. How do you rate him as a president compared with recent presidents?
Routine. I did not apologize. I did not feel I had done anything wrong, and if sidewalk comments on the streets or any kind of poll at all, everybody wound up on my side. But that's immaterial. I really don't give a damn about that. No, I did not apologize. I said to him that when we invite people to be on the air, the principal requirement is that we be polite to them. And we are. And I was not polite to him. For that, I was sorry. That's all. That's all I said. You call that an apology? Okay. Yes, sir.
What great change have you seen in television?
Well, there have been many. It's so primitive in the beginning, it's not fair even to compare it to today's television, and I'm talking about the technical aspects of it. The programming aspects are, well, it depends on what program you look at and what time of day and so on. There's just so much of it. I mean, it's a massive outpouring of good stuff and junk. The ratio of one to the other, I'll let you decide for yourself. The truth is, I don't look at television much. The proof of that is that they've spent a lot of time and money making a documentary about me, including my family and my children and so on. I did not look at it. I have not seen it. I keep hearing about it, but I have not seen it. I started before television came along, and I've never really got used to looking at it. I look at the Redskins on Sunday and not much more. The great changes have been these. When we started, NBC, you will not believe this, NBC was processing its film in a bathtub at the Wardman Park Hotel. A bathtub. They had a sort of simple, junky processing machine that was homemade, wasn't worth a damn, seldom worked. When it did, the pictures that came out were awful. And one day, I used to do, when television was brand new, I did a little 3-minute, or 5-minute, I guess, news program, and I use the word news loosely, every evening at 6 o'clock. And I had one cameraman who traveled around town during the day trying to find something to put on Brinkley's news program. And he usually came in with about 4 minutes of film, and I put it on, having never seen it before, not even knowing what it was until it came up on the screen. I was supposed to narrate it. How could I narrate something I don't know a damn thing about? But that's what I had to do, and that's how bad it was. One day I'll never forget, He brought in a little series of film stories, 4 of them. The first was a story about the funeral of some departed statesman in Arlington Cemetery. I don't remember who it was. The 4th and the last was about the Agriculture Department experimental station out at, Greenbelt, where they were doing some kind of experiments with sheep. So, this is silent film, and this is too technical to go into, but because it is silent film, you can put it in the projector upside down if you're not careful. So I introduced it, blah, 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 and here came a film, a picture of a sheep upside down. You're so smart, tell me what you would do. I was in a little booth about the size of a phone booth, and on the screen a picture of a sheep upside down. What the hell would you say? What could you say? So that's how primitive it was. It was really bad. Gradually it has improved, and the greatest improvements have been in fairly recent years since the invention of magnetic sound, which is good quality sound, and pictures, magnetically produced pictures, which can be sent by satellite. We used to use film, and if it was a foreign story, it almost always came in through the London airport. Only God knows what happened to the millions of film that lost in the London airport. To this day, I do not know where it is. Now it comes by satellite, comes quickly, and technically speaking, television is extremely good. The editorial or musical qualities or dramatic qualities is something else. Some of it's good, most of it is not. But listen, we could use up William Shakespeare in his entirety in about 2 weeks. So then what would we do? There is no way to produce good quality programming for that much time, that many stations, for that long. We are caught in a trap from which we cannot escape. So I haven't answered your question, but at least that's what the problems are, and if you care to think about it and you can find an answer, fine, let me know. Yes, in the back. Yes.
Who is the most interesting president that you've come to know?
Most interesting president? Harry Truman. I could go on all day about him, but I won't. Harry Truman, one thing I remember I think is amusing, his daughter, Margaret, wanted to be a singer. She took some lessons and did a little studying, I think, and she was invited here in Washington to sing on some local station's radio program. She sang. Paul Hume, the music critic of the Washington Post, wrote a review in which he tore her limb from limb. Maybe justifiably, I don't know, I am not a music critic. And I and the other smart alecks around town who were on the air said, oh, this is terrible, the President of the United States should not write nasty letters to music critics, it was beneath him, and blah, blah, blah. Fast forward. My son, Alan Brinkley, who's now a historian, was in Landon School in the choir. They invited the choir to sing at the National Gallery of Art on Christmas Eve, to sing Christmas carols. A bunch of kids. Paul Hume reviewed them. I called him. I said, you son of a bitch, if I could get hold of you. I mean, it depends on whose son is being gored. So you've got about enough of me, I think. Yes. Yes.
Do you ever listen to talk radio?
I do some.
How would you comment on it?
I do some when I'm in the car and when I have nothing to do at home, put my feet up and turn on. Yes, I do. Some of it I like. What was your question? What do I think of it?
Yes.
I think it's kind of interesting. I've even thought about doing it myself sometime in the future when I have nothing else useful to do, which may already be the case, but in any case. I kind of like it. People call in and from all over the country, and they have ideas to offer, good, bad, indifferent. And I think it's a kind of look at the American people which we all need to see, know about. And I kind of enjoy it. Some of those running these programs tend to be, in my opinion, half-baked nuts, and I don't listen to them. But the basic idea of talk radio, I think, is pretty good. It's a place where people can call, say something, have it heard by a large number of people. And I think that's useful, and I think it's beneficial, and I rather like it. You want me to? One more, and we'll let you go. They'll sign books. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. One last question. Yes, right here.
In light of your comments about President Clinton and Marion Barry, is there any public official that you do like or respect?
That's 2 out of 2. That's yes, a great many public officials I like, and this country would not survive without them. Somebody has to make the decisions. Somebody has to do the work. Somebody has to decide how to do this and how to do that. Public officials are important and indeed indispensable. And we wouldn't be here if we didn't have some who were good and capable and honest and devoted to their work. By sort of dumping on 2 of them, that doesn't change anything at all, except for the 2. So the answer to your question is yes, many of them. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Brinkley. And I have a quick thanks also to Alfred A. Knopf, publisher of Everyone is Entitled to My Opinion, and Paul Bogarts. Thank you for joining us here today, and Sophie Cottrell for all her help with the book. We do have the book signing, which will begin now, and the book is available in the back of the room. We're giving a 20% discount on it, as we do for all hardcover books. So Mr. Brinkley has graciously agreed to stay for a little while and sign copies of the books. We won't have time to have them personalized, but he will sign them. So we invite you to purchase the book in the back of the room and join us. And then when you have time, Mr. Brinkley and the rest of the audience out there, come back and see the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So please join us for the book signing. And thank you again, Mr. Brinkley. And Happy New Year.